So this video is how to find the equation of a line, but it also is going to cover finding the slope of a line, because finding the slope is part of the steps to finding an equation. So we'll kill two birds with one stone. So we'll use this video also for finding the slope given a line or 2 points. So when we want to find the actual equation that made the line here, there's one equation that describes this line. If the line was going a different direction, then it would be a different equation. Or if it was, shifted down here or tilted a different way, each line has its own unique equation that has created it. And so no matter what the line looks like, we can follow a set of steps to find the equation. And I've broken the steps down here. Step one is you want to find the slope. And the slope formula, slope is represented by the letter M, and I have searched high and low over the years to try and figure out why they chose the letter M. Can't find a reason for it. So I just made up one in my head that we ski on slopes and mountains, so M is for mountains in my brain. But welcome to Heidi's world. But slope is represented by the letter M. And so if you want to know the slope, you need this formula, the y2 minus y1 in a fraction over x2 minus x1. And I will tell you, be really careful with this formula, because my brain does not like it. I think it should be in alphabetical order. I think the x's should be on top and the y's on the bottom. It doesn't work like that. They didn't ask me when they invented math, so that's not how it goes. But it works, this way, as long as you take your time and be really careful about getting those y values on the top. Now, these little subscript numbers, these numbers written down low, are just telling you the position of something. So if we have a set of coordinates, for example, let's say we have a set that's 1 and 5 and 3 and 7, that the 1 and the 2, what they represent is the x and the y from the first set, and the x and the y values from the second set. So, and it doesn't matter which set's first and second. I could have called this the second and this one the first. So it's okay. But the point being, they're describing how to take the numbers out of these sets. And the biggest issue here, and the reason why they have to put those numbers on there, is because you just want to make sure that the x and the y that you start with here are coming from the same set, either set, and that the second x and y are also from a same set. So if I'm going to put y and x here, it could be 7 and 3, top and bottom, or it could be 5 and 1. It doesn't matter, but just make sure if you start with one set here, make sure you start with the same set down here. That's the big issue. Okay, so now, after you find the slope of the line, then the second step is to find the y-intercept, which is known as b. We know slope is m, but the y-intercept is known as b. And what a y-intercept is, it's where a line is touching the y-axis, because the up and down axis is the y-axis, and the left to right is the x-axis. And so the y-intercept is that spot where the line is crossing and touching the y-axis. So this is the x-intercept here, and this is the y-intercept here. And in our equation, what we're interested in is only the y-intercept. So in this particular line, the y-intercept crosses at -2 on the y-axis, so our y-intercept is at -2. In fact, it's at 0 on the x and -2 on the y. Notice this x-axis, x-intercept is at 3 on the x and 0 on the y. Intercepts always involve the opposite letter being 0, by the way. So we want to find the y-intercept, which is known as b. And how we do that is we take the slope that we found in step 1 and we plug that into this template. Y equals mx plus b is the equation you're looking for. It's the template. Y equals mx plus b is the type of equation that we are looking to create. And we're going to use this pattern to find the equation. So since we now know what the slope is, we would put that in for m. And then we would also plug in any coordinate set of x and y. So up here on this one, we could plug in the 1 for the x and the 5 for the y. Or we could use this set. It never matters which set you use as long as it comes from your line. And then when you plug those numbers in, you'll be able to, the only thing you won't know is b. And so you just do the math, solve the equation, and find b. So once you find slope and intercept, those are your first 2 steps, then you go back to that pattern of an equation, linear equation, y equals mx plus b, and this time you're not going to put any numbers in for x and y. The only numbers you're going to put in are the things that you discovered in step 1 and 2. You're going to put a number in for m, and you're going to put a number in for b. You're going to put your slope in, and you're going to put the y-intercept value in, and then that will create the equation that you want. So using this line right here, I've already identified the name of these 2 locations. Their address basically is what it is. And so I have 2 sets of x and y, and that's what you need to be able to find the slope. You need 2 sets of x and y. So we have 3 and 0, and we have 0 and -2. And so to use the slope formula, we have the slope is, remember, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to decide which set is first and second. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to call this my x1 and my y1, and this my x2 and y2. And I really recommend, just for the sake of helping your brain not go crazy, put these above it, because it's real easy to get them backwards and mess it up, like I mentioned up here, how they have to come from the same set. So I always identify mine so I can help my brain work better. Anyway, so the second y, so this, I've said the second y is -2. I will tell you that if the numbers are negative, sometimes it can mess up our equation if we're not careful. So in order to keep from messing it up and doing things our brains tend to do, I set up the equation already with this fraction line and with the 2 subtraction signs. And then I put parentheses in here because I'll tell you, sometimes we get kind of mixed up. So I just think this helps avoid some errors if you set it up like this. So we're going to take the second y, which is -2, and we're going to subtract the first y, which was 0. And then on the bottom, the x's, it's the second x, which is 0, subtract the first x, which is 3. And then when you do the math, we get -2 over -3. And you can double check that with your calculator. Now this makes sense because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so we would actually end up with a +2/3. And notice that makes sense with our line, because notice our line is going from low to high, it's going uphill, and that means it's a positive slope. Now if our line had been going down this way, starting high and going low, then I would expect my slope to be a negative number. So that's one way to kind of, in your back of your mind, check, does my answer make sense? So now we found that our slope is 2/3. That was step 1. Step 2 says, now take the template of equation, the y equals mx plus b, and plug in all the numbers except for b, because we don't know what, in this case we do know what the y-intercept is because we can see it in the picture, but that's not always going to be the case. If they had given us a different line with different locations, we would need to, or if they'd just given us these points or whatever, we wouldn't be able to do that without plugging it in here. So let's assume for now that we don't know what b is. So we have found the slope. So if you're watching this video to say for finding out how to find slope, you just got your answer. But continuing on with step 2. So this is step 1, step 2. We want to fill in y, m, and x. And that goes back to either one of these sets. It does not matter which one you use, just use only one of them. Don't take a number from each set. That is not the right thing to do, but just use one. I'm going to use this set because I don't like to work with negative numbers any more than I have to. So I'm going to use this set, the 3 and the 0. 3 for x, 0 for y. And I'm going to plug in the 3 for the x. And I'm going to put the slope 2/3 in for the m. So I plugged in my set of coordinates for x and y, and I have my slope here. And then we're just supposed to solve for b. So I'm going to do the multiplication here real quick, and that becomes just 2. And then to get b alone on one side of the equal sign, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And so here I have b is -2. So our slope is 2/3. Our intercept is -2. And so step 3 for writing an equation then is to use that template, y equals mx plus b, and plug in just the m and just the b. So I have y equals my 2/3 slope, x, and then a -2 for b, so it's going to say -2. And that's the equation of this line.